On May the 22nd, Salman Abedi made his way to the Manchester Arena. He waited in the foyer for the Ariana Grande concert to finish. As fans started streaming out, Abedi detonated a suicide device.
There was rubble and dust in the air, smoke everywhere, and then there was just screaming, wasn't there?
There was just too much for 3 paramedics to deal with.
There were homeless people helping, members of the public helping. I'm a paid public servant and I wanted to help. I just wasn't allowed to help.
Now that night, the emergency services treated hundreds of people, many with life-changing injuries. But what we have learned is that some of the most seriously wounded had to wait for more than an hour before receiving any expert medical treatment. Tonight on Inside Out, we ask, why did that delay happen? What effect did it have on the injured and the dying? 12 months before the bomb, a training exercise was staged at the Trafford Centre on the outskirts of Manchester. Authorities were pleased with how it had gone.
Well, we are delighted. I mean, the aim of the exercise was to really stress test all of the organisations that would respond to a terror attack.
But what happened on May the 22nd when a real terror attack took place? Abedi triggered his bomb at 10:31 p.m. On the night, I was here right in the centre of Manchester, and in the aftermath, I was interviewing people on Radio 5 Live, trying to piece together what had happened.
Everybody just started running as far as we could.
The whole building shook, and there was bodies everywhere.
How long were you lying there for? Probably an hour.
So, on the night, people were telling me that some of the injured were waiting an hour for treatment. Shortly after 11 o'clock, that's half an hour after the bomb went off, those who'd been in the foyer, injured but were able to walk, were evacuated to here. This is Victoria Station approach. Ambulance crews from across England treated the injured who'd been able to escape the scene. But for those in the foyer, expert help was still very limited. Before the police cordon was made secure, only one North West Ambulance Service paramedic made it into the foyer. Over the next hour, he was joined by 2 more paramedics. But eyewitnesses we've spoken to say more medical help was desperately needed. Kim and Phil Dick from Bradford were in the foyer to collect their daughter and granddaughter. Seconds after the explosion, a victim with serious injuries collapsed in front of Kim.
She could hardly walk. She was stumbling, bleeding from her arm and her mouth and her leg, and all her hair was burnt, and I just grabbed her because I thought she was going to fall. And we heard all the screaming, people screaming and running out. You got bandages out, and we were just keeping them alert and talking to them.
How long was this over?
It's over an hour, just over an hour. And I just kept saying, you've been really brave, but we could hear the ambulances all the time, and I must sound like a parrot. I was just on and on and on.
As time passed, concern grew about the lack of paramedics in the foyer.
The armed police came running in, the normal police, the armed police, and you know, that we were I just kept shouting, we need paramedics now. And they said, we're just making sure there's no more bombs.
An hour after the explosion, the wounded in the foyer were still only receiving basic first aid rather than expert paramedic help.
You know, the longer it went on, the more silent it became, and it was really eerie. And people who I'd seen a little earlier who were severely injured were now dead. They made a decision at some point, about an hour and 10 minutes after the explosion, I think, that the medical staff weren't coming up to the foyer, but we were going to evacuate all the casualties.
Security fears may explain why only 3 paramedics could enter the so-called hot zone where the bomb had gone off. But it's harder to understand the delay in the arrival of fire and rescue staff. Commanders on the night held fire and rescue staff back at their stations until 12:18 a.m, fully 1 hour and 47 minutes after the blast.
The fire service made a decision to go to a rendezvous point, which is what is normal practice, as did the ambulance service. The ambulance service were called forward, and at this stage I'm unsure as to why the fire service were delayed so long.
Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service has a technical response unit. These are people trained specifically to deal with terrorist situations. That unit took part in the Trafford Centre exercise last year, but those in charge on May the 22nd decided not to deploy the unit. Save the UK Fire Service is the major online platform for firefighters in the UK. And on the night of the Manchester bomb, those who were on duty used this page as the events were unfolding to vent their frustrations that they weren't being sent to the arena.
I've been a firefighter in Manchester for nearly 10 years, and I've never ever felt so much guilt in all my life.
We were only half a mile away from helping, half a mile away from potentially saving lives, and that will always stick with me forever.
A paramedic lady came to us, pleading with us to help because they needed it.
One firefighter who was on duty that night has come forward to tell us how it felt.
We heard the main ambulance command and control guy saying to his staff, basically, this is what's gone on. I can't guarantee your safety. If you don't want to go, you don't have to. So at this stage, I'm asking for volunteers. And to a man and woman, they put their hands up and did what they're paid to do. The paramedics, I won't say they were having a go at us, were asking us where we were. People were dying. Why weren't we there? And we were just helpless. As uniformed service, you do what you're told to do. I don't want the public to think we didn't want to go or were scared to go. We were held back by the senior management. The firemen wanted to go and do what the paramedics were doing. We can fetch, we can carry, we could administer basic first aid. There were homeless people helping, members of the public helping. I'm a paid public servant and I wanted to help. I just wasn't allowed to help.
After a terror attack in Mumbai in 2008, the UK government said it wanted fire and rescue staff to be able to assist the ambulance service with casualties if a similar attack should happen here. But since then, no agreement has been reached with the Fire Brigades Union.
It's a truly terrible situation. It's an impasse that we're torn. Do we stop our people doing it? Do we tell them not to volunteer? The standard firefighter, if you like, has had no training whatsoever, no awareness training, let alone procedural training. It's quite scandalous.
The Fire Brigades Union wants its members who attend terror attacks to know that compensation for their families will be automatic. At the moment, they would have to prove that their employers were negligent.
I'm absolutely confident that the public would expect that whether it's a firefighter or a police officer or an ambulance worker who got killed under those circumstances, that there would be an automatic, reasonable payment for those family members that are left behind.
Now, we wrote to every fire service in the whole of the UK to ask them if their firefighters were insured to attend terrorist incidents. Of the 49 fire and rescue services across the UK, 27 replied to us. Of these, 19 refused to answer the question on the grounds of national security. One fire service, Nottinghamshire, told us their ordinary firefighters are not covered to go into a terrorist incident. Greater Manchester did not reply, but have now told the BBC that its firefighters are covered for terrorist-related deployments. Those trapped in the foyer that night remain very grateful that so many people were willing to put their own lives at risk to help save lives of others. But almost 6 months on, they remain concerned that emergency medical help was so slow to arrive.
They want to minimise the risk to as many people as possible. I perfectly understand that. But they deployed tens, if not hundreds, of police officers into that foyer and into the arena. And if some of those had been medically trained, then you can't say for certain, but some people's injuries could have been dealt with quicker, and perhaps, just perhaps, some lives could have been saved.
But one eyewitness believes that under the circumstances, the authorities did the absolute best they could.
You'd like everybody to get help straight away, wouldn't you? Well, you'd like every single medic, every doctor that was in Manchester should have been there, and they would have liked to have been there, and everybody would have been in there helping everybody, and nobody would have died, and that would be it. But it couldn't happen.
The hairs are standing up on the back of my neck because it's embarrassing that we weren't allowed to go. There were ambulance crews from East Midlands. There were police from North Wales at the incident, and we were stood by.
Why was it that the ambulance service were able to commit crews and felt confident enough to commit crews, but the fire service wasn't?
The Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has now set up an independent review under Lord Kerslake to learn lessons from the events in May. It's due to report next year.
There was a feeling at the time that the wrong call was made in those moments. Now, it seems to me that there is some substance to that, and it was one of the reasons why the independent review was set up. But it's not about feelings, is it? That's the point, is it? It's about what is the evidence.
Those in charge of the emergency services that night had a truly terrible decision to make. Should they deploy as quickly as possible, trying to save lives, but while there was still the threat of a second explosion? Or should they wait until the area had been declared safe, therefore delaying treatment to victims of the bomb as a result? North West Ambulance Service told us they were proud of their response to the Manchester Arena attack. They said that within an hour, all critical patients had been moved and were being treated by 50 paramedics. Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue say that they have conducted their own internal debrief into the organisation's response to the Manchester Arena attack and are fully cooperating with the Kerslake review. Greater Manchester Police told us that they contacted the North West Ambulance Service within 3 minutes of the incident being declared, and they followed their major incident plan. None of these organisations wanted to appear in this film while the Kerslake review is ongoing. We can tell you that the girl the Dicks helped did survive.
The crying was really loud, and then as that hour went on, it just went down and down, then there was no crying. It was just... I was shouting, I need paramedics, I was just getting very desperate, needing them.